The sharp scent of antiseptic stings my nostrils as my eyes snap open, confusion swirling in my chest. Still, I don't react. Just a slow blink, feeling the cold bandages around my wrist. As the fluorescent lights buzz above, the truth slowly sinks in. This isn't just any nursing home. It's the one my own children, Grace and Daniel, have locked me in, without a second thought. While the anger rises, the chilling realization strikes. They don't know I own the very company that runs this place. That's when I smile. They'll regret this betrayal. We're about to begin, but if you'd like, share where you're joining from. It reminds me this story doesn't echo into silence. It lands somewhere real. Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. Eleanor's eyes snap open, her breath catching in a sharp, painful gasp. For a moment, the world is a blur. White walls, fluorescent lights overhead, and an overwhelming smell of antiseptic. The air feels sterile, suffocating. She tries to move, but something tugs at her arm, pulling her back. Her right wrist is tightly bandaged. The edges of her memory come back slowly, like fragments of a broken mirror. Flickers of her children's faces, the sterile buzz of an airport, their cold smiles. Why am I here? Her head spins as she struggles to connect the dots. A soft sound draws her attention to the door. A woman stands there, dressed in white. A nurse, young, in her 30s, her dark hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. She doesn't seem to notice Eleanor's confusion, her face impassive, almost too calm. "Welcome to Alpine Rest, Mrs. Whitmore," the nurse says, her voice soft but distant. Eleanor's mouth feels dry. She moves her hand to rub her face, but the bandage on her wrist jerks painfully. The restriction doesn't sit right. "What is this place?" "I didn't agree to this," Eleanor whispers, her voice hoarse, strained. The nurse pauses, not responding right away. "Your family said you did," she finally replies, her words clipped. Eleanor's pulse quickens. Family? She scans her foggy memory. Grace, Daniel. Their faces, sharp and indifferent, float to the surface. The argument at the airport. Something about her being too old, too slow, a burden. The moment they'd walked away. But she didn't expect this. Her eyes narrow, the anger rising slowly but steadily. "They've left me here. They've thrown me away." The nurse's voice interrupts her thoughts. "The facility is top-rated, Mrs. Whitmore. You'll receive the best care here." Care. The word feels like a slap. Best care? Eleanor's lips tighten. She isn't here because she needs care. She's here because they want her out of the way. They think they've pushed her to the margins of her life, thrown her into this cold, sterile cage to disappear. But Eleanor isn't the kind to disappear. Not without a fight. She studies the nurse, her eyes sharp, calculating. The woman's words don't align with her expression. She sees it now. The subtle shift in the nurse's stance, a nervous tension in the air. This wasn't a mistake. Eleanor has been placed here, trapped by her own children, but she's not helpless. "Tell me," Eleanor says quietly, her voice cold. "Who owns this facility?" The nurse hesitates, her eyes flicking to the door before returning to Eleanor. "It's owned by the Whitmore Care Group." The words hit Eleanor like a slap to the face. Her own company, her empire. The realization floods her with cold clarity. They've put her in her own prison. She lets a moment of silence pass before speaking again, her voice sharp with cold amusement. "How poetic." The nurse shifts, her gaze faltering. Eleanor sees the nervous flicker, and for the first time she smiles, quiet, almost imperceptibly. They don't know who they're dealing with. Eleanor leans back, testing her limbs, the dull ache in her wrist reminding her of the restraints she's in. The rage inside her stirs, but she knows better than to act on impulse. The fight isn't over. It's just beginning. The nurse remains standing, awkward in the silence. Eleanor speaks again, this time more slowly, each word precise. I'll be taking control of this situation now. Your facility, this place, is going to learn just how wrong they were to think they could trap me. The nurse doesn't respond, but Eleanor sees her swallow, a tiny crack in her composure. Without waiting for another word, Eleanor closes her eyes for a moment, steadying herself. This is how it starts. The silence presses in, heavy and suffocating. Eleanor's fingers twitch, the sharp ache in her wrist reminding her of the bandages constricting her movements. The sterile room, with its cold metal surfaces and glaring white lights, offers nothing. Nothing but the gnawing sense of being trapped, discarded. She shifts in the bed, trying to find a more comfortable position, but it's useless. There's no comfort here. She wants to call her children. Grace? Daniel? Where are they? Why aren't they here? Eleanor reaches for her phone, only to find the small bedside table empty. Her breath catches for a second as panic flares, then quickly fades, replaced by a cold, calculating clarity. They took my phone. Of course they did. She looks around the room, the corners, the walls, searching for anything she might have missed, anything to explain why she's been left here. But the room is as sterile as the world outside it. No distractions. No escape. The door opens and Eleanor glances up, her sharp gaze meeting the young nurse standing in the doorway. Clara. She's wearing that same detached, practiced expression, like someone who's learned the art of patient care without ever really looking at the person they're caring for. "Can I help you, Mrs. Whitmore?" Clara asks, her voice soft and professional, almost too much so. It's clear she's not here to engage with Eleanor's anger or confusion, only to manage her. "I need my phone," Eleanor says flatly, testing her voice. Clara hesitates. "I'm sorry. No personal electronics allowed in the facility. The rules are strict." Eleanor raises an eyebrow, unimpressed. She's heard that before. No personal electronics. Visitors by appointment. It's a control tactic. Nothing more. It's meant to isolate her, to erase her from any connection with the outside world, to make sure she doesn't have the tools to fight back. Fine, she thinks. Let's see how far their control extends. "Tell me," Eleanor continues, her tone calm but firm. "Who owns this facility?" Clara's eyes flicker. It's a tiny shift, but Eleanor catches it. Just the briefest hesitation, the smallest crack in the nurse's mask of professionalism. The nurse shifts her weight from one foot to the other before answering, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's owned by the Whitmore Care Group." The words hit Eleanor like a punch to the gut. For a moment the room spins, and she feels the rush of blood in her ears. The Whitmore Care Group, her company, her creation. The realization floods over her in waves, icy, suffocating, and unforgiving. They've put me in my own prison. Her eyes lock onto Clara's, steady, unblinking. Clara looks away first, shifting her weight again. Eleanor doesn't miss the subtle panic beginning to rise in the nurse's posture. She knows that the nurse has realized what this means, what Eleanor is starting to piece together. A quiet, bitter smile spreads across Eleanor's face. How poetic. The irony of it settles in her chest. They think they've outsmarted her. They've handed her over to the very thing she built, the very empire she controlled. They've put her in their cage, but what they don't know is that the cage has a key, and I hold it. Clara shifts, clearly uncomfortable in the silence. "Is there anything else I can do for you, Mrs. Whitmore?" Eleanor doesn't answer right away. She lets the words hang in the air, tasting the bitter sweetness of the moment. This was no accident. This was a calculated move on her children's part. They thought they could lock her away, out of sight, out of mind. But Eleanor has always known how to turn the tables, how to make the pieces fall into place when everyone else is too distracted to see the game. No, Eleanor says finally. Her voice is ice cold. I'll be fine. Clara nods and leaves, closing the door behind her with a soft click. Eleanor exhales slowly, the air thick with the weight of what she now knows. She's been trapped, but she's far from powerless. She's Eleanor Whitmore, and the game is just beginning. As the minutes pass, Eleanor feels the first seeds of her plan taking root. There's always a way out, always a strategy. And if her children want to play the game this way, if they think they can bury her, they've gravely underestimated her. She closes her eyes for a moment, steadying her breath, her mind already working through the next steps. They think they've locked her away in a cage of their making, but soon, she'll show them what it really means to be trapped. The quiet of the room feels heavier now, like it's closing in around her. Eleanor sits up, her back against the stark white pillows, her thoughts sharp, focused. She knows exactly what she needs to do next. The plan is starting to take shape, but it needs a push, an opening. The door to her room clicks open again, and Eleanor's gaze flicks up, assessing the new figure in the doorway. It's Luca Steiner, the facility director. He stands there for a moment, his posture stiff, his eyes wide with surprise. His face is as clean and sharp as his suit, but there's something off in his gaze, something unsettled. Mrs. Whitmore? His voice falters, like he wasn't expecting her to be here, much less awake. I thought... Eleanor cuts him off, her tone cool, crisp, cutting through the air like a blade. You thought I was dead? She says, her eyes narrowing slightly, challenging him with just those few words. Luca hesitates, blinking at the sharpness of her reply. He clears his throat, regaining his composure. No, I wasn't informed that you were awake, he explains, his voice stiff but polite. Almost too polite, as if he's walking on eggshells. Eleanor doesn't let him settle. She leans forward, the movement slow but deliberate. You're telling me you had no idea I was alive, but you're here to manage my affairs? Her words land like ice, crisp and calculated. I think you've been misinformed, Luca. Luca's brow furrows, uncertainty creeping in around the edges of his professional mask. He shifts from foot to foot, clearly uncomfortable in the face of Eleanor's unwavering gaze. But Eleanor doesn't back down. She knows exactly how to make them squirm. You should understand, she continues. The paperwork that got me here, it's all based on lies. Gray signed everything, claiming I had early cognitive decline. She lets the words hang in the air, letting Luca absorb them, watching him carefully for any flicker of recognition. Luca's face tightens. He shifts uncomfortably on his feet, the confession hanging in the air. Finally, he speaks, his voice more measured now, almost apologetic. I was told the decision was made with the family's best interests in mind. Your children signed everything. I thought, you thought they knew best? Eleanor interrupts, the edge of sarcasm in her voice sharper than ever. You thought they could determine my competence without even checking? It seems their best interests are more about getting rid of me than actually caring. Luca seems to deflate a little, the tension in his posture softening, but the discomfort remains. He opens his mouth to speak again. But Eleanor isn't finished yet. She's only just begun to lay her cards on the table. Leaning back slightly, Eleanor straightens, her gaze piercing as she watches Luca. I think it's time to test their competence, Luca. Your competence. A small shift in his expression, a flash of recognition, perhaps realization, crosses his face. But Eleanor doesn't wait for him to react. She shifts slightly in the bed, moving her wrist just enough to adjust the angle of her hand. Then she leans forward and, In the softest of whispers, speaks a string of numbers and letters, an old code, one that only Luca would recognize. It's her original CEO authorization string, the one used to authorize corporate transactions, the one that only she and Luca could access. Luca freezes. He stares at her, his face pale as the full weight of the situation crashes down on him. His eyes flicker to her wrist, the bandages, the restraints, and then back to her face, his expression betraying something between awe and fear. He knows exactly what she's just done. She watches him closely, knowing that this moment is the one where everything changes. She's taking back control. Luca doesn't speak for a long moment. He stands there, his mouth slightly agape, unsure of how to proceed. But Eleanor doesn't give him the luxury of hesitation. Finally, he bows his head, the admission coming softly, almost regretfully. "You're still the chairwoman," he says, his voice barely above a whisper, as though the weight of the words is too much for him to bear. Eleanor leans back, letting the words settle in the space between them. The silence stretches out, but Eleanor is unfazed. She feels the tension in Luca, the uncertainty in the air, and it's exactly what she wants. He's the first to realize the depth of his mistake, but he won't be the last. She holds his gaze, steady, unflinching. "Good," she says, her voice calm and calculated. "Now, Luca, you'll do exactly what I say. No questions. You'll follow my lead from here on out." Luca nods, his face pale but his stance shifting to something more resolute. He's learned his place in this moment, and Eleanor knows this is just the beginning. With a slow exhale, Eleanor watches him turn to leave. He's no longer in charge of this situation. She is. The game has officially begun. Eleanor sits in the sterile silence of her room, the hum of fluorescent lights above the only sound breaking the stillness. Her fingers hover over the tablet, thoughts sharp, focused. They think they've trapped her here, isolated her. But they've made a mistake. She's already a step ahead. She opens a blank email, the cursor blinking on the screen. Slowly, she begins to type, choosing her words carefully, deliberately. It's a message they'll feel, even if they don't fully understand it yet. Subtle, calculated. To Grace Whitmore. Subject: a lovely stay. Dear Grace and Daniel, I wanted to take a moment to thank you for your generous decision to place me in such a lovely facility. The care is exceptional, and I feel as if the future here is full of potential, just as you so thoughtfully intended. The accommodations are pristine, and I'm confident that the facility will serve as a reminder of your kindness and devotion. I'll make sure your generosity is remembered publicly. In fact, I'm already drafting a statement. Warm regards, Eleanor Whitmore. She reads it over once more, making sure every word hits the right tone, polite but cutting. A sharp sting hidden behind a mask of civility. Then she presses send, watching the message disappear into the ether. Moments later, her tablet buzzes with an incoming message from Grace. Eleanor's lips curl into a thin smile as she taps the screen. "You can't do anything from there. This is just a formality." Eleanor leans back, her eyes narrowing. They think they've won. They think I'm powerless. She sets the tablet aside, letting the words simmer in Grace's mind for a while. Let her panic. It's just the beginning. The door opens and Luca steps in, his face tight with discomfort. He holds a folder in his hands, the edges worn from use. Eleanor doesn't greet him. She simply motions for him to place the documents on the small table beside her. He does so, avoiding her gaze. Eleanor opens the folder, her fingers moving carefully over the pages. It doesn't take long before she finds it. The pattern, the numbers, the transfers. Grace's name, appearing again and again. The funds moved into accounts that don't belong to her. Eleanor's chest tightens, but she says nothing. The rage will come later, when it's useful. For now, she keeps her face neutral, calm. "She's stolen me blind," Eleanor says quietly, breaking the silence. The words are colder than she feels, each syllable like ice. Luca looks uncomfortable, but he doesn't speak. He knows better than to offer excuses. Eleanor leans back in the bed, her mind already working through the implications of what she's found. This is more than theft. This is betrayal. She looks at Luca, her gaze hardening. She'll pay. In interest. Luca shifts, uneasily aware of the weight of her words, but he doesn't respond. He doesn't need to. The game has changed, and he knows it. He's no longer in control. Eleanor is. She flips the folder closed and sets it aside, her mind already moving on to the next step. Grace and Daniel think they've buried her here, but all they've done is given her the perfect vantage point from which to strike. Luca lingers for a moment, unsure whether to speak, but Eleanor is done with pleasantries. She looks at him, her expression cold. "Leave," she says, her voice flat and final. He doesn't argue. Nodding stiffly, Luca turns and walks out, the door clicking shut behind him. Eleanor exhales slowly, her thoughts already running ahead. She's not trapped. Not anymore. This is just the beginning. Eleanor leans back in the bed, the quiet of the sterile room enveloping her as her mind races with possibilities. Grace and Daniel think they've silenced her, locked her away in this cage, but it's the perfect vantage point. From here, Eleanor can see everything. And now, it's time to take control. Time to make her move. She taps the tablet again, her fingers steady as she types a short message to Luca. It's time for the first part of her plan to unfold. "Luca, I want a full internal audit of the Whitmore Care Group, immediately. I'm signing as acting owner." The message is simple, direct. Eleanor doesn't wait for a reply. She knows Luca will comply. He doesn't have a choice. She's still the chairwoman after all. Her grip on the company may have seemed tenuous to those around her. But that was always the illusion. The hours stretch on as she waits, each minute passing with a quiet tension in the air. Finally, Luca returns, a file in his hand. He's more nervous than usual, the weight of his compliance settling on his shoulders. "Everything is in place," he says, placing the documents in front of her. His voice is tight, unsure. "The audit has begun. Staff are confused, but they're complying." Eleanor flips through the file without a word. The paperwork is clean, meticulously organized. But it doesn't matter. This audit isn't about finding mistakes. It's about sending a message, and Grace will feel it. She signs the documents, her signature precise, acting as the acting owner. The power she's always held is coming back to her, piece by piece. Grace sits at her desk, her fingers tapping impatiently on the surface. She's scanning through a series of financial reports when an email notification catches her eye. She opens it, and her face goes pale as she reads the subject line: "Notice of Inquiry, Whitmore Care Group Audit." Her heart skips a beat. The familiar panic begins to rise in her chest. She quickly picks up the phone and dials the facility in Zurich. Eleanor picks up the phone without hesitation. She doesn't need to say anything. The sound of Grace's voice on the other end says it all. "Mother?" Grace's voice is tentative, a hint of disbelief creeping into her words. Eleanor doesn't flinch. "Good morning, Grace." Her voice is calm, almost cordial. "You should have read the shareholder agreements more carefully." There's a long pause on the other end, and Eleanor can almost hear the blood draining from her daughter's face. Grace stammers, "What? What are you talking about?" Eleanor smiles slightly, the satisfaction of the moment almost overwhelming. "The audit. I've requested one, and I'm sure you'll find it enlightening." Grace's breath catches in her throat. She knows, deep down, that Eleanor is right. Her mother still controls the company, still holds the majority of the shares. Grace had thought that paperwork would be enough to bury her, to dismiss her as irrelevant. But she'd underestimated Eleanor's resilience, her ability to stay in the game, even from the sidelines. "You didn't think I would just fade away, did you?" Eleanor continues, her tone ice cold. "You thought you could steal from me, hide behind your signed papers, and bury me here in this facility. Well, Grace, it seems you've underestimated me." There's silence on the other end, and Eleanor can almost hear the panic rising in her daughter's voice. This is just a formality," Grace finally says, her voice shaky. Eleanor's smile widens, though she knows Grace can't see it. "No, my dear. This is just the beginning." Eleanor pauses, letting the words sink in, savoring the tension in the air. She knows Grace's world is starting to collapse around her. The game is shifting, and Eleanor is no longer the one on the sidelines. "You've made a mistake," Eleanor says softly, her voice dripping with quiet menace. "And now you'll have to deal with it." Eleanor sets the phone down, her heart still steady. The first move has been made. The audit is already in motion, and Grace is just starting to realize that everything she thought she knew, everything she thought she controlled, has slipped from her grasp. As the door closes behind Luca and the silence returns, Eleanor leans back, her mind already working on the next move. There's much more to come, but this is just the beginning. The silence is a weight, pressing down on Eleanor. The walls of her sterile room seem to close in on her, but she doesn't flinch. She's accustomed to the quiet. It's in moments like these, when everything feels suspended, that she's most dangerous. She knows how to wait, how to let the world around her crumble while she moves unseen, unnoticed. They thought I'd disappear. They were wrong. Eleanor's eyes flick to the clock. It's been 2 days since the audit was set in motion, and Grace is already showing signs of panic. She can feel it in the air, even if her daughter hasn't said a word directly. Grace is scared. But Eleanor won't wait for her to make the next move. She will act first. A soft chime from her tablet breaks her thoughts. She taps the screen, expecting another panicked message from Grace, but it's a notification from her bank. She opens it, her gaze sharpening as she reads the email. Account frozen. A wry smile pulls at the corners of her lips. Grace has cut off her personal bank accounts in the US as expected. She thinks this will silence Eleanor, cut her off completely. But Grace doesn't realize this is just another mistake. Eleanor's hand reaches under the mattress of her bed, fingers brushing over a hidden compartment. Inside, a small device rests, the key to her Swiss bank accounts. The ones she set up long ago, before her children thought they could discard her. She's already moved the bulk of her wealth there. No matter how much Grace locks her out, Eleanor's resources are untouched. As the tablet flickers again with another notification from Grace, Eleanor sets it aside. She doesn't need to respond. Not yet. Her eyes turn toward the door where Nurse Clara enters, her face more tense than usual. Clara pauses when she sees Eleanor's gaze, sharp, focused. There's something in her eyes now that wasn't there before. A quiet recognition of the fire burning beneath Eleanor's calm exterior. "Is everything all right, Mrs. Whitmore?" Clara asks, her voice gentle, but Eleanor hears the slight quiver. Eleanor's lips curl into a faint smile. "Everything's fine," she says, but the words carry a weight that Clara can't miss. "They left me here to disappear," Eleanor murmurs, her eyes narrowing. "Instead, I'll make them visible." Clara falters, unsure of how to respond, but Eleanor doesn't give her the chance. She picks up the tablet again, swiping to open a new message. This one is addressed to Dr. Feld, the facility's head physician. Eleanor's fingers hover over the keys for a moment before she begins typing. Dr. Feld, I need to speak with you about the care here. Specifically, patient mistreatment. There are records I want to review, and I think you'll want to cooperate to avoid further issues. Regards, Eleanor Whitmore. She hits send. The room feels lighter somehow, as if the first piece of her plan is finally in motion. She knows what the doctor will say. He'll hesitate. He'll ask her why, or worse, suggest she drop it. But Eleanor is not one for hesitation. She'll get what she needs, one way or another. Moments later, Dr. Feld responds, his message short and cautious. Mrs. Whitmore, I'm not sure what you're asking for, but you should know. If we go down this road, it will destroy this place. There are things happening here that you don't understand. If you push this, there will be consequences. Eleanor's smile widens as she reads the words. He's scared. She can feel the shift in the air, the subtle unraveling of control. She knows exactly what he's afraid of. She types back immediately. No, Dr. Feld, I won't destroy it. I'll rebuild it. The words hang in the air between them, loaded with finality. Eleanor knows this is the turning point. The power dynamics are shifting, and Grace and Daniel haven't even realized it yet. They think they've isolated her, shut her down. But every move they make, every step they take to control her, only tightens the noose around their own necks. She leans back against the bed, her fingers tapping rhythmically on the edge of the tablet. They'll come for me, eventually. But they'll come too late. Outside, the rain begins to fall in heavy sheets, the sound of it washing over the silence. Eleanor closes her eyes, feeling the steady beat of her own heart, knowing she is on the cusp of something much bigger than any of them can see. She's been buried for too long, but now she will rise. The quiet hum of the facility surrounds Eleanor as she flips through the papers Luca has brought her. Her eyes scan the documents, bills, contracts, operational reports, and then they land on a set of records tucked away in the back. Her fingers still as she studies the files. It takes a moment for the full significance to sink in. The records show more than just financial transactions. They reveal a pattern of insurance fraud, a trail of falsified claims, and large sums diverted into accounts that shouldn't exist. Eleanor's heart beats just a little faster, but her expression remains unreadable. Grace. The realization settles into her chest like a heavy weight. Grace had taken her control, her empire, and twisted it for her own gain. But now, Eleanor has the leverage she needs. Without a word, Eleanor picks up her phone and dials a number she knows by heart, her attorney in Zurich. As the phone rings, she carefully gathers the files, taking note of every detail, every transaction that paints a damning picture of her daughter's betrayal. The phone clicks, and her attorney's voice greets her. Eleanor, what's this about? I have something for you, she says, her voice calm, deliberate. A set of records. They're connected to the Whitmore Care Group, specifically to Grace. I need them sent to the right people, anonymously. Her attorney hesitates for only a moment before agreeing. Understood. We'll handle it from here. She ends the call without another word. The documents are out of her hands now, but they will do their work. Like a bomb quietly ticking away under the surface. Eleanor knows the look on her daughter's face without having to see it. Grace, desperate to assert control, can feel the noose tightening around her neck. The audit, the documents, and now this. Eleanor knows Grace is already scrambling to cover her tracks. And so, Grace does what she does best. She flies to Switzerland, thinking she can fix the mess she's created. The door opens and Luca enters, his expression neutral, but his eyes betraying his unease. Grace is here, he says, almost apologetically, as if her presence is something he can't prevent. Eleanor's eyes narrow slightly, but she doesn't move. She knows this visit will be more than just a daughterly check-in. Grace is coming to confront her, to try and silence her. The hospital cameras are already capturing her every move. Eleanor leans back in her chair, her fingers resting lightly on the armrests, her gaze flicking to the live feed of Grace's arrival in the facility. The camera feed crackles as Grace storms down the hallway, her face tight with anger. Grace enters the room, her voice rising. "You have no right to do this to me," she shouts at the staff, the words sharp and biting. "My mother is incompetent. She doesn't know what she's doing." Eleanor watches with a cold smile as Grace's words echo through the feed. There's nothing left of the daughter she once knew, just a fragile shell of a woman desperate to maintain control. Eleanor doesn't even flinch at the harsh words, letting Grace dig herself deeper. Luca watches the feed with concern. He steps toward Eleanor, his voice low. "Do you want me to intervene?" Eleanor's smile widens just slightly, her voice soft but firm. "No. Let her drown herself." Luca hesitates, unsure, but Eleanor's command leaves no room for discussion. Grace has already played her hand, and now, every step she takes is only digging her own grave. Eleanor can feel it, the shift, the momentum building. Grace is unraveling, and she has no idea how far she's fallen. As the feed continues, Eleanor remains silent, her focus unwavering. The pieces of her plan are falling into place. Grace can shout, she can throw tantrums, but none of it matters. The truth is already in motion, and Eleanor has all the leverage she needs. The room feels colder now. The quiet around her is no longer oppressive. It's empowering. The walls of the facility, once a symbol of her confinement, now feel like the fortress from which she will strike. Grace doesn't know it yet, but she's already lost. And Eleanor? Eleanor is just getting started. The door slams open with a force that shakes the stillness of the room. Grace storms in, her face twisted in fury, her breath coming in sharp, uneven gasps. Her eyes lock onto Eleanor, who remains seated, unmoving, as if she hasn't even noticed the storm entering her sanctuary. "How dare you audit me?" Grace's voice is a screech, full of panic and anger. She's shaking, her hands trembling as they claw at the air between them, trying to grasp control of the situation that's already slipping from her fingers. Eleanor doesn't look up from the papers she's reading, her gaze steady on the documents in front of her. She doesn't need to meet Grace's eyes to know what's coming. She can feel the storm building, but she won't let herself be swept away by it. "Do you really think this is your company anymore?" Grace continues, her voice rising, her eyes flashing with a dangerous mix of entitlement and fear. "You've been hidden away like some burden for months, and now you think you can come back and take everything from me?" Eleanor finally looks up, her eyes calm but piercing, like she's staring through Grace, not at her. "I'm not taking anything, Grace," she says quietly, her voice measured. "I'm simply returning your kindness. You stole from my legacy and dumped me here. You thought I'd fade away, disappear in the shadows? You were wrong." Grace's face flushes with a mixture of fury and humiliation, but she doesn't back down. With a sudden movement, she lunges forward, trying to grab the papers from Eleanor's hands. The desperate action betrays her. She's slipping, losing control in front of the one person she never expected to see again. Before Grace can reach the table, Luca steps in, his body blocking her way. Grace stumbles back, her eyes blazing with rage. "Get out of my way, Luca!" she hisses, her voice low and venomous. Eleanor doesn't move. Her voice is quiet but firm as she speaks, her eyes locking onto Grace's. "You forget, dear," she says, her words slow, deliberate. "You're trespassing." Grace freezes. The word stings like a slap, and for the first time since entering, she falters. It's clear she's not accustomed to hearing those words from her mother. Eleanor watches her, her calm never wavering. Grace's breath hitches, her hand still extended toward the papers, but she doesn't dare touch them again. Her fingers twitch with frustration. She can feel the walls closing in, her power slipping, and for the first time, it's not just the physical walls of the facility that bind her, it's the realization that she's losing everything. Eleanor leans back in her chair, her gaze still fixed on Grace. "Take a good look around, Grace," she says softly. "You've built this prison for me, but I'm the one who holds the keys." Luca steps forward, his voice hesitant but firm. "You need to leave, Grace," he says, his tone far more authoritative than before. "The decision has been made, and there's no room for argument now." Grace doesn't move immediately. For a long moment she stands there, her chest rising and falling with each breath, her mind racing. She's been so sure of her control, so certain that her position was unshakable. But now she realizes she's lost. Two guards step forward from the corner of the room, their presence silent but unmistakable. They move toward Grace, but she doesn't resist. The fight has left her, replaced by something darker: defeat. "Come on, Grace," one of the guards says gently, as if trying to coax her from the room. Grace glares at him, her face contorted in a mixture of rage and disbelief, but she doesn't fight. She's been outplayed, her every move countered, and now she's the one being escorted out, like an unwelcome guest in her own home. Eleanor exhales slowly as she watches Grace leave. The door clicks shut behind her, and the silence returns. The quiet weight of the room feels different now, heavier, but also somehow more solid. The pieces are falling into place, but it's not over. Not yet. For just a moment, Eleanor allows herself to breathe, the mask slipping for the briefest of seconds. The pain beneath her poise surfaces, but only for an instant. She's been through too much, endured too much to show weakness now. Grace may have thought she could bury her, but Eleanor has never been so close to taking everything back. As the last echoes of Grace's footsteps fade, Eleanor leans forward, picking up the papers once again. She doesn't need to look at the documents. She knows the game has changed. And now, with the first real confrontation behind her, it's time to finish what was started. The mask is back in place, the storm is far from over, and Eleanor Whitmore has just begun to fight. The facility's walls, once a symbol of Eleanor's confinement, now feel like the calm before a storm. The quiet has settled in after the confrontation with Grace, but the storm isn't over. It's only just begun. Eleanor leans back in her chair, her fingers lightly tracing the edge of the audit documents. She knows the game has shifted. But even now, as she takes stock of her victory, the next move is already forming in her mind. She's not finished. Not by a long shot. The door opens quietly. Eleanor's eyes flick up, noting the figure standing in the doorway. It's Luca, looking more uncomfortable than usual. He's carrying a folder, his posture stiff, betraying his inner turmoil. "Mrs. Whitmore," he says, his voice quiet, almost hesitant. Eleanor doesn't reply immediately, her gaze steady and calculating. She's already well aware of the storm that's brewing. Luca hesitates, taking a small step forward before placing the folder down on the table in front of her. "Something has changed," Luca begins, his eyes flicking to the folder, then to Eleanor, clearly uneasy. Eleanor stays silent for a long moment, letting the silence stretch between them. The air is thick with unspoken tension. She knows what's coming, but she doesn't flinch. She's already seen the cracks forming beneath her feet, and now it's time to let them split wide open. Finally, Luca speaks again, his voice low. "Dr. Feld has sold the documents. She gave them to Grace." Eleanor's hand stills for a moment, but her face betrays nothing. She's prepared for this. She knew the internal corruption ran deep. She'd suspected this would happen, and now, the full weight of it is falling into place. Why? Eleanor's voice is cold, clipped, but there's a slight edge to it. The question is more about understanding how much betrayal has infected this place than it is about Dr. Feld's motivations. Luca shifts on his feet, his discomfort growing. She. She needed the money. Grace promised her hush money in exchange for the documents. Feld, she's been facing financial ruin. The guilt. He trails off, his voice almost a whisper. Eleanor's eyes narrow, her mind racing through the implications. Dr. Feld, the woman responsible for overseeing patient care, has sold her out. Sold the very documents that could expose the fraud. It's a betrayal that runs deeper than she could have imagined. Then, a voice from the hallway, Clara. The nurse who had been so careful around Eleanor watching from the periphery now stands just outside the door. She's holding her phone, her face pale with apprehension. Mrs. Whitmore? Clara hesitates, looking between Luca and Eleanor. I overheard. Eleanor raises an eyebrow, her calm composure never faltering. Clara steps closer, her voice barely above a whisper. I overheard Dr. Feld and Luca. Feld. She's been helping Grace. Selling the audit documents for hush money. I recorded the conversation. Clara pulls her phone from her pocket and places it on the table, the screen lighting up with a recording. Eleanor listens carefully as the voices of Dr. Feld and Luca fill the room. The words are clear, damning. They confirm everything Eleanor feared. As the recording ends, Eleanor remains silent for a moment, absorbing the weight of it all. Grace and Feld, working together. A mother and her trusted ally, both tangled in the same web of lies and greed. Eleanor's fingers hover over the tablet. She doesn't need to say anything more. The pieces are in place. Without a word, she opens a new message and attaches the recording, along with the audit documents. She sends it off to the authorities in Zurich, the message concise but potent. Attached, evidence of internal fraud and collusion within the Whitmore Care Group, immediate investigation required. She watches the message disappear into the ether, knowing it will reach the right people. People who will act, people who will tear down the empire Grace has built. Eleanor leans back in her chair, her face impassive, but the satisfaction of the moment still lingers in her chest. The storm begins at dawn, Eleanor says softly, her voice carrying an edge of finality. Luca, who's still standing nearby, nods silently, his face pale with the weight of his own involvement. Clara steps back, still unsure of how much further this will go. But Eleanor has already made her move. She feels the shift. It's no longer about fighting for control. It's about dismantling the entire system Grace has built. And Eleanor Whitmore is ready to watch it all crumble. The early morning air is crisp as rain taps gently against the window. Eleanor stands before it, her eyes fixed on the horizon beyond the facility. The steady rhythm of the rainfall mirrors the quiet satisfaction that hums beneath her calm exterior. She feels the world shifting around her, and it's a feeling she's becoming more and more familiar with. The power she once held in her hands is returning, slowly but surely. Inside, the storm is already brewing. She's already seen the reports, the ones detailing the action taking place as the Swiss financial regulators descend on the Whitmore Group's Zurich branch. The documents, the recording, the proof, all of it is coming to light. Grace's empire is crumbling, and Eleanor is watching it all unfold, piece by piece. She knows what's coming. The pieces have fallen into place. As the sound of helicopters overhead filters through the window, Eleanor's lips curve into a faint smile, but her eyes remain cold, calculating. Regulators swarm the office building like a well-organized force, sweeping through the pristine lobby with precision. Men in suits exchange nervous glances as they watch the raid unfold. Armed guards stand at attention, but no one dares move. Within moments, the accounts are frozen. The doors to Grace's private office are opened. Her personal assets are seized without ceremony. Her corporate holdings, once vast and unassailable, are now in jeopardy. Everything she had taken for granted is slipping away. Grace's face is pale as she watches the news on her phone, unable to escape the weight of the consequences. She dials Daniel, but the phone rings unanswered. Her breath catches in her throat as she hears the headlines blaring on the television. Whitmore Group investigated for fraud and elder abuse. Her empire, her legacy, everything she had built is now in the hands of the authorities. The walls are closing in. Eleanor hears the faint buzzing of her phone, the name Grace Whitmore flashing across the screen. For a moment she contemplates answering, but then decides against it. There's no need to rush. Grace's calls are nothing more than the sound of desperation now, and Eleanor doesn't entertain desperation. Her fingers move across the screen of her phone to check the news. Her smile widens slightly as the headline confirms what she already knows. The storm is now in full force. From behind her, Clara enters, her eyes flicking between Eleanor and the screen. She knows what's unfolding, what the headlines mean. There's an air of awe in her voice as she speaks. "You really owned them all along," Clara says, her tone filled with disbelief and admiration. Eleanor doesn't look at her immediately. Her gaze remains on the steady rainfall outside, the world still turning as it always has. But her voice, when she speaks, is calm, collected, impossible to read. "Ownership," she says softly, "isn't about paperwork, it's about patience." Her words hang in the air for a moment before Clara speaks again, her voice tentative. Do you think Grace realizes now? What's happened to her?" Eleanor's lips curve into a quiet, knowing smile. "She'll realize soon enough, but it will be too late." Grace's hands shake as she holds her phone to her ear, the voice of the attorney on the other end failing to offer any comfort. "The authorities have frozen everything. Everything." The word echoes in her mind as she looks around her once impressive office, now an empty shell of what it once was. The weight of her mistakes bears down on her as she crumbles into her chair, a raw, desperate sob escaping her throat. The world she's built is no more. The rain intensifies outside. Eleanor stands still in front of the window, the gentle sound of it tapping against the glass almost like applause. She doesn't move, her posture unyielding. There's no triumph in her eyes, only the cold satisfaction of a battle well fought. As Clara watches Eleanor, her own expression shifts. She has seen the transformation, the quiet power Eleanor holds, the way she has woven the threads of control back into her grasp. She's watched as her former employer turned the tables on her children, bringing their empire to its knees without ever raising a hand. In this moment, Eleanor Whitmore has not only regained her legacy, she has dismantled the very foundation her children built. She's rebuilt it in her image, stone by stone. The power she wields now is a quiet one, unseen, unacknowledged, but it is the most dangerous kind. Eleanor exhales softly, and her lips curl into a faint smile, her eyes never leaving the window. She's done more than outlast them. She's made them irrelevant. And now? Now she's ready to rebuild everything piece by piece, from the ashes of their mistakes. The storm outside rages on, but inside, Eleanor is calm. She has already won. The knock on the door is soft, tentative. Eleanor doesn't need to hear it twice to know who it is. She's been waiting for this moment, but that doesn't make it any easier. Her heart beats with a strange mixture of anticipation and sorrow, but she doesn't show it. She doesn't move. She's been through too much, endured too much to show weakness now. The door opens, and Daniel steps in, his face pale, eyes wide with a combination of fear and guilt. His hands are clenched at his sides, and he hesitates for a moment, as if unsure whether to enter or retreat. "Mom," he says quietly, his voice cracking with emotion. The word feels hollow coming from him, like a shadow of what it once was. "Can we talk?" Eleanor's eyes don't leave the window, where the rain still lashes against the glass, the storm outside matching the turmoil she feels inside. She knows what he's come for: the apology, the begging, the desperate attempt to regain some semblance of control. "You shouldn't have come," Eleanor says, her voice a quiet knife. It's not anger, it's something colder, a distance. "You think you can undo this now, after everything that's happened?" Daniel steps closer, his face strained. "I didn't know she'd go this far, Mom." His voice wavers, but there's something desperate behind it. Something raw. "I never thought she'd do this to you. To us." Eleanor finally turns, her gaze cold and unwavering. The storm outside doesn't reach her, doesn't touch her composure. She looks at her son, really looks at him. For the first time in a long while, she sees the man he's become, and the disappointment cuts deeper than anything Grace has ever done. "You knew enough," she says, her voice barely above a whisper, but the words hit him like a punch. Her gaze doesn't soften. "You knew enough to walk away, but you chose to follow her." Daniel's face crumples. He opens his mouth, but no words come out. Instead, his shoulders sag, and he drops his head. The weight of his own guilt too much for him to bear. The tears he's held back finally break free, spilling down his cheeks in silent, bitter defeat. Eleanor watches him, her breath steady. She should feel something. Anything. But all she feels is the dull ache of abandonment. The one thing she has always feared, the one thing she's never truly faced until now, is the truth of how completely her children have turned from her. The silence in the room is suffocating, and for a moment she almost feels the pull to comfort him. But no, she can't. Her voice breaks the silence, quieter now. "I gave you both everything. Everything I had, and you—" She stops herself, closing her eyes for a brief moment. The pain threatens to surface, but she holds it back. She's built walls, stronger than ever. "You gave me abandonment. Not once, but again and again." Daniel takes a step forward, his hand trembling as he reaches for her, but Eleanor steps back, her eyes never leaving his. She won't let him get close, won't let him break through this hard shell she's built. He's too late. They all are. "I don't know what you expect from me, Daniel," she says, her voice steady now, but the weight of everything she's endured makes her words feel like a final blow. "You've seen what Grace is capable of, and now you want my forgiveness?" His breath hitches, but all he can do is stand there, lost. The walls that once seemed unbreakable have come down, but not in the way he hoped. The damage is done, and it's too late to fix. Eleanor turns away, her back to him, facing the window once more. She won't let him see the tears she's holding back. The storm outside is nothing compared to the storm inside her, the battle between the mother she wanted to be and the woman she had to become. "Tell your sister she'll need a lawyer," Eleanor says quietly, the words slicing through the thick air like glass. She doesn't look back to see his reaction. She doesn't need to. Daniel stands frozen for a moment, then turns, his shoulders slumped as he exits the room. The door clicks shut behind him, but the weight of his departure lingers, pressing in on Eleanor's chest. She lets out a slow breath, her eyes closing as the tears finally begin to gather, but they don't fall. She won't let them. Not now. Not in front of him. The rain outside continues to fall, the sound louder now, like applause echoing in her ears. She's fought for so long, but it's not over. There's still much to do. The storm has only just begun. The courtroom is hushed. A silence so thick it feels like the air itself is holding its breath. The trial is a spectacle, but Eleanor is beyond the crowd, beyond the cameras and the media frenzy. Her seat in the courtroom is a quiet one, hidden in plain sight, remote, secure. The video feed a faceless window into the proceedings. She watches, her eyes fixed on the screen, her face a mask of calm. The world is watching, And this time, it's not Grace in the spotlight. The charges are read aloud, one by one: fraud, coercion, elder exploitation. Grace's name echoes through the courtroom, each syllable like a verdict in itself. There's no sympathy in the judge's eyes as he listens to the evidence, and with each passing minute, Eleanor feels the weight of her silence settling deeper into her bones. She's not here to gloat. She's here because it's the only way to reclaim what was always hers. Grace sits in the defendant's chair, her face pale, her eyes darting back and forth, too frantic, too nervous. The media cameras catch every moment, the way she shifts uncomfortably, the way her lips tremble when she tries to form words. She's no longer the untouchable heiress. She's the accused, and the truth is relentless. The prosecution calls their first witness, Dr. Feld. Eleanor watches as the woman steps to the stand, her face drawn, her eyes heavy with guilt. Her testimony is a mixture of remorse and self-preservation. She confesses, her voice shaky but determined. The money, the hush agreement, the documents she sold, all of it laid bare. She's cooperating, seeking leniency, but the damage has been done. The betrayal is as public as it is personal. For a moment, Eleanor's hand tightens around the armrest. Dr. Feld's confession is everything she needed to confirm that the rot ran deeper than she ever thought. It's not just Grace. It's the entire system they built, the lies that have festered beneath their polished surface. The weight of it all presses on her chest, but she doesn't let it show. She's never been this close to the finish line, and she will not falter now. She's been stripped of her arrogance. The woman who once wore control like a second skin now looks like a frightened child, her fate hanging in the balance. As her mother watches from the screen, Grace shifts uncomfortably, the weight of her own actions crushing her. Eleanor knows this is it. This is the moment Grace realizes she has lost. Not just her wealth, but her power. Her own blood, her own flesh, exposed for what she truly is. When the time comes for her to testify, Eleanor's voice is steady, unshaken. She appears on the screen, calm, composed, but there's an intensity in her eyes that no one can miss. "My children thought they buried me in weakness," she begins, her voice carrying clearly over the virtual connection. But weakness was their illusion. Her words hang in the air, as if to punctuate the entire trial. The media coverage has been relentless, but in this moment, Eleanor becomes the symbol of quiet strength, of a woman who refuses to be erased. The courtroom watches as she speaks, the public's opinion shifting in her favor. The woman they thought was a victim becomes the victor, reclaiming her place not just in the court, but in the world. Eleanor's testimony is the final blow. She recounts the pain of her betrayal without bitterness, the injustice of being discarded by those she gave everything to. Her calm demeanor, her composed delivery, it all weaves together to expose the cruelty beneath Grace's actions. And the world listens. The final day of the trial arrives, and the gavel falls with a resounding crack. Grace is sentenced. The charges stick: fraud, elder abuse, coercion. She'll face years behind bars, a fall from grace that's as swift as it is complete. Daniel's name is implicated in the illegal wire transfers, and though he avoids prison time, his reputation is forever tarnished. The weight of his involvement, the betrayal he chose to be a part of, shatters any illusion he may have had of redemption. Eleanor watches it all unfold on the screen, her face neutral, her emotions carefully tucked away. This isn't a moment of triumph. It's a moment of release. As the judge delivers his final ruling, Eleanor exhales, the sound barely audible. She sits back, her fingers lightly tapping the edge of the desk, watching as Grace is escorted away, her world crumbling around her. The media frenzy is deafening, but Eleanor remains unaffected, a quiet storm within a storm. In the hallway outside the courtroom, the reporters swarm, trying to catch a glimpse of the woman who has become a symbol of resilience, but Eleanor is already gone. As the echoes of the trial fade, Eleanor's voice rings in the courtroom, not as a question, but a statement. The storm has passed, and I remain. The gavel falls. The storm outside may have subsided, but inside, Eleanor Whitmore has already won. Eleanor stands in the corner of her new office, a place of quiet purpose. The once sleek corporate headquarters of the Whitmore Care Group now feels different, more human. The walls, stripped of their polished veneer, are lined with photographs of elderly patients, their faces soft with smiles, their eyes clear. It's a far cry from the cold luxury of the empire Grace built. It's real, and it's her work now. She glances at the framed photograph on her desk, a reminder of what has been rebuilt. The company that once represented her downfall is now a force for good. It's been a year since the trial, and the world has changed. The storm has passed, but Eleanor has remained. And now, she has taken the pieces of what was shattered and rebuilt something more meaningful. The shift has been radical. After the collapse of Grace's empire, Eleanor used the recovered assets to transform the Whitmore Care Group into a nonprofit organization. The focus is no longer profit, but patient care, dignity, and ethical standards. She's ensured that the mismanagement and corruption that once defined her children's legacy will never return. The work has only just begun, but Eleanor has already reshaped the future. Luca Steiner, once a mere employee, now stands at the helm of the new Whitmore Care Group. The transformation is nothing short of remarkable. His role as CEO is the result of years of Eleanor's mentorship, lessons in both business and morality. He walks through the facility, where new staff members are already taking on the vision she set for them. Each step he takes is a reminder of how far they've come. "You've done well," Eleanor tells him during their monthly meetings, her voice firm yet encouraging. "But remember, leadership isn't about control. It's about guiding others to achieve what's best for them." Luca nods, his respect for her unwavering. "Thank you, Eleanor," he says. "It's an honor." She smiles at him, but there's no arrogance, only quiet strength. "The work is never finished. We do our best every day, and we make sure to keep learning." Clara, once the nurse with quiet admiration for Eleanor, now sits in her new office, a promotion to Director of Patient Advocacy. The role fits her naturally, her compassionate nature now directed toward improving the care and quality of life for the residents she once cared for. Eleanor watches her growth, always guiding, always pushing her to understand the deeper responsibility that comes with influence. "Clara," Eleanor says during one of their conversations, her tone light but with an edge of seriousness. "You're not just advocating for patients, you're creating a culture that values each individual." Clara nods, grateful for the opportunity and for the trust Eleanor has placed in her. "I won't let you down, Eleanor." Eleanor's eyes soften slightly, but her expression remains focused. "You never could." The next morning, the front page of a major news outlet captures the impact of Eleanor's transformation. "Former CEO rebuilds industry she created. Whitmore Care Group, reborn as nonprofit." The headline is simple, but carries weight. Eleanor's quiet revolution, the dismantling of a corrupt empire, and her refusal to be erased from the narrative have all come together in the form of something pure, something right. The press calls her a symbol of resilience, of strength, and, for the first time in years, public sentiment is firmly on her side. She has rebuilt more than a company. She has rebuilt a legacy. In the midst of this new life, Eleanor receives a letter, this time from her grandson, the son of Grace. The handwriting is familiar, yet distant, as if the child she once helped raise has grown into a stranger. Her heart tightens as she reads his words. "Dear Grandma, I don't know if you'll ever forgive me for what my mother did, but I need to tell you that I'm sorry. I never understood until now. Please know that I'm not like her. I hope you'll find it in your heart to let me make things right. With love, Jonathan. Eleanor sits with the letter in her hands for a long while, her thoughts heavy. The wounds of the past are not easily healed, but this is a small gesture of hope, of a potential break in the cycle of destruction her children began. She can feel the weight of it all, the responsibility of being the one who changes the narrative. She's been through the storm, and now she has a chance to guide the next generation in a way she never could, with grace. Later that week, Eleanor agrees to meet Jonathan privately. She's prepared herself for this moment, another person in the line of her family who needs to reconcile with her. Jonathan arrives at her office, his expression uncertain but hopeful. He's still young, still raw from the fallout of his mother's actions, but there's something in his eyes that reminds Eleanor of the person she once tried to protect. "I'm sorry," Jonathan says, his voice low. "I never understood what she was doing, or how she hurt you." Eleanor looks at him, her eyes softening, but only slightly. She's been burned too many times to let the warmth fully return. Still, the flicker of hope in his eyes is undeniable. "The cycle breaks with you, Jonathan," she says softly. "It doesn't have to repeat. You have the chance to make it right." He nods, the weight of her words settling in. "I will. I promise." Eleanor's heart twinges with something she hasn't felt in a long time. Hope. She looks at him, knowing the road ahead will be difficult, but for the first time in years, it feels like there's a way forward. The legacy of her family may never be fully healed, but with Jonathan, the possibility of breaking the cycle is within reach. The storm outside may have passed, but Eleanor Whitmore is not just surviving. She is rebuilding, one piece at a time. The flight back to San Francisco feels surreal. Eleanor sits in the quiet of the first-class cabin, the hum of the engines a distant backdrop to the storm of emotions brewing inside her. The city below, sprawled across the bay, seems unchanged, its lights flickering like 1,000 little beacons, untouched by the upheaval that has shaped her life. But Eleanor has changed. Her purpose, her strength, her legacy. It's all been remade, reshaped. She's already built something better than the empire Grace destroyed. She's already paved the way for a future more meaningful than anything her children could have inherited. As the plane descends, her thoughts drift to the house she's returning to. The place that once symbolized the pinnacle of her power, now empty. Just another house, waiting to be signed over to strangers. A place filled with memories, both bitter and sweet, but mostly bitter now. The car ride from the airport to her old home is quiet, the driver wordlessly navigating through the familiar streets of her past. When they reach the front gate, Eleanor pauses, her eyes scanning the property for the first time in a long while. It feels hollow now, like a shell of what it once was. Eleanor steps into the foyer, the marble floors cold beneath her feet, the grand staircase that once defined her sense of grandeur now feeling like a monument to her fall. The echoes of her footsteps reverberate through the empty halls. No laughter, no voices, just silence. The rooms are bare. No furniture, no photos, no signs of life. It feels like a tomb. A place frozen in time, and Eleanor takes a long breath, letting the weight of it all sink in. This house is where it all started. This is where her empire began, where she once thought she could control everything. But now it's just a house, full of memories of betrayal and loss. She's finally let go of all of it. She walks through the empty rooms, her fingers lightly grazing the walls. The place holds no warmth anymore, only cold memories. The house may be empty, but it's her legacy she's leaving behind, not just the walls. At the desk, Eleanor signs the final set of papers, papers that will sever her ties to this place forever. There's no ceremony, no fanfare, just the quiet finality of a decision made long ago. As her pen moves across the page, she feels the last of the weight lift from her shoulders. She doesn't hesitate, doesn't look back. There's nothing here for her anymore. Not the house, not the memories, not the children who turned on her. When she finishes, Eleanor places the documents down with a soft sigh, then pulls out a letter, her final act of defiance. She's already decided who will receive it. Eleanor folds the paper neatly, her fingers steady as she writes, "You could have inherited an empire. You chose greed instead." She signs it, her name final and resolute at the bottom. Her children, both of them, will never understand. They'll never know the sacrifices she made for them, the ways she put them above all else, and still, they abandoned her. They thought they could discard her, but Eleanor is still here, still standing, and they will never get the empire they believed was their birthright. With a final exhale, Eleanor grabs the letter and walks to the front door. As she steps outside, she pulls out her phone and makes the call. It's to the charity foundation she's worked with over the past few months, the one that will now benefit from the majority of the Whitmore Care Group shares. "I'm ready to finalize the donation," Eleanor says, her voice calm. But there's a strength behind it that carries through. "The majority of the shares are yours. I've made sure this is the right place for them." She listens for a moment, the recipient's voice on the other end filled with gratitude. "It's all done," she says. "The future of elder care will be different now." The next morning, as Eleanor settles into the quiet rhythm of her new life, her phone rings. It's Luca. "Eleanor, we've done it," he says, his voice full of pride. "We've secured the future, and we've decided." Eleanor listens as Luca continues. "The changes are now in full swing, and the transition is complete. We're naming the new wing after you," he adds, "for everything you've done, for rebuilding, for giving back." Eleanor's lips curve slightly, but there's no glee, only a quiet acceptance. "Call it second chances," she says, her voice soft but firm. Eleanor steps outside, the rain starting to fall again, gentle at first, then stronger, as if the world itself is cleansing her past. She watches the droplets race down the windowsill, feeling the steady, rhythmic beat of the storm. It's familiar now, like an old friend, echoing the release she's been waiting for. The storm may rage, but Eleanor knows it's the end of the cycle. A cycle of greed, of pain, of betrayal. She's rebuilt from the ashes of it all. And now, there's nothing left but the work ahead. She lets the rain wash over her face, the coolness of it soothing, cleansing. She is reborn in this moment, not as the woman her children tried to bury, but as the woman she was always meant to be. The camera pulls back, the rain still falling lightly, like applause, as Eleanor Whitmore steps into the world she's reshaped. Second Chances is more than a name. It's the legacy she leaves behind. The evening sky over Zurich is painted in soft shades of orange and pink, the sun dipping behind the distant mountains. It's a peaceful, serene moment, the kind that contrasts sharply with everything Eleanor has endured. She sits in the quiet garden of the facility, a place she's come to think of as home, not because of its walls, but because of the people within them. Beside her, Clara sips from a teacup, the steam curling up in the cool air. The once cold clinical facility now hums with warmth. The patients laugh softly in the distance, their voices carrying through the garden like a gentle melody. It's a sound Eleanor hasn't heard in years. Laughter, real and unburdened. The facility has become a place of healing, not just for the patients, but for Eleanor herself. Clara looks at her, her face thoughtful. "Do you ever miss them?" she asks, her voice soft, almost hesitant. She doesn't need to clarify who she's talking about. Eleanor knows. Grace, Daniel, the children she once thought she could save, who now seem like distant strangers. Eleanor's gaze drifts to the horizon, her mind flickering back to the days when she lived for them, when their voices, their needs, were the axis around which her world spun. But now, everything feels different. The pain of their betrayal still lingers, but it's no longer a wound. It's a scar, one that's hardened over time. She shakes her head, her expression soft but resolute. Sometimes, she says quietly, the weight of the words settling between them. But not the people they became. Her gaze returns to the patients, to the garden, and then to Clara. She knows she will never forgive what they did, but she's reached a place where forgiveness isn't needed. The past is done. The future, however, is hers to shape. Clara doesn't press further, but Eleanor can see the understanding in her eyes. There's no need for words between them now. Clara, who has been by her side through the rebuilding of this place, understands what Eleanor has been through, even if she can never fully know the depth of that pain. The moment stretches out, and Eleanor lifts her teacup, her fingers curling around the delicate porcelain. The warmth of the tea fills her hands, grounding her in the present. To what's ours, she says softly, lifting the cup in a silent toast. Peace. Clara raises her cup, her eyes steady, the quiet resolve in them matching Eleanor's. They drink in unison, the quiet clink of their cups barely audible above the sounds of the garden. It's a simple gesture, but in this moment it feels like a victory. They've rebuilt something meaningful, something real. In the lobby of the newly restructured facility, a plaque has been mounted on the wall. It's simple, but the words carry weight. The camera pans slowly, capturing the inscription. Founded by Eleanor Whitmore, 2025. The date is significant, marking the year everything changed. The year Eleanor took back what was hers. The year she rebuilt, not just a company, but a legacy. As the camera pulls back, Eleanor sits alone in the garden, the light fading from the sky. The sound of laughter continues in the background, a stark contrast to the silence that once surrounded her. Her face is serene, but there's something steely in her eyes, something that speaks of battles fought, of losses endured, and of victories won. They thought they left me powerless, she says softly, the words a quiet exhale. But I was the hand that signed their downfall. The camera lingers on her face for a moment longer, capturing the calm before the storm, before it slowly pulls back. The image of Eleanor sitting in the garden becoming smaller and smaller until the world around her seems vast and unyielding. But Eleanor has already claimed her place in it. The storm is over, and Eleanor Whitmore remains.